You think there's a monster behind that closet? Cool. Let's go open up that door and see what's really there. It's probably not a monster. It's probably a lesson you need to learn.
Enter the world of magic mushrooms with Microdose U.
Hey, Jake, so fantastic seeing you again. Welcome back to the show. How are you today?
Dr. Dave, it's great to see you as well. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm doing great, getting a good, couldn't ask for a better start to my week here than being with you.
And I'll tell you, like I said last time we talked, I love your energy, and I'm going to say it again. Seriously, you just whenever I chat with you, man, I get just feel really, really good. So let's get right into this. I've got a question for you. I know you see clients, and I know you help guide people through journeys, through psilocybin journeys. So a question I get asked a lot is like, what does it really feel like? I talk a lot about microdosing on my channel here, but people are saying like, what does it really feel like to go through a full journey? So is there any way you can kind of guide me through or guide us through from start to finish? What do you do when somebody contacts you, and how do you get them through their first journey or a journey?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll take you again. Everything in this work is pretty nuanced, right? And a lot of different experiences. I'll take you through kind of a typical client journey. They find me in some fashion. I have a website, I have Instagram. However, they may find me and reach out, referral, whatnot. And then the first thing that we always do is set up a clarity call. So that's a half hour, and it's just it, for lack of a better term, it's really a vibe check. It's making sure that they're comfortable with me and that I'm comfortable with them. It's what we're deciding if we're going to embark upon is such a intimate, energetic exchange that we both need to feel safe in each other's presence. And from their standpoint, to be able to be vulnerable, they need to make sure that they could trust me. So that's what we're trying to parse out on the first call. And that's, again, a half hour, them running me through their history, what they're seeking, me sharing a bit about my philosophy and approach to the medicine, answering any questions. And then on that call, I always say, don't make a decision. Hang up, sleep on it at least one night. If you want to move forward, reach back out. If they do reach back out, we send paperwork and my liability forms, and I get a medical history. If they clear that, then we're good to work together. And then the process actually starts. So it's typically about 6 weeks.
So typically, when do you ask the question like, what is your goal? Like, what do you want to do this journey for? What's your reason for journey? And I'm sure you do, because I think you just said that. But then, what's a typical answer? What is the normal? I guess there's no normal really, but what is like a typical answer you would get? Like, why does somebody want to do a journey like this with you?
Number one question that we need to define, and the earlier the better in the journey, right? So in that preparation, intention setting. And again, these vary. A lot of folks come in for healing past traumas or trying to realign and find their inner voice or North Star, what's next, are probably the two most common, right? Folks just being stuck and needing a reboot and seeing psychedelics as a path forward.
Well, so and then what's next after that first call?
So after that clarity call, we hop into our preparation, and that is minimum 2 hour long Zoom calls, sometimes three, sometimes four, depending on what it takes. The first is more of a traditional therapeutic setting, right? Where they're doing about 80% of the talking, and I'm kind of staying quiet, doing about 20% prodding, where I think necessary, and just getting a full idea of three things: their past, where they're coming from, and then their present, where they're at right now, and then hopefully, with intentions, their future. Um, and then the next session of preparation is going to be a little more me doing a little more talking about what to expect with the journey itself, um, as well as intention setting and just getting really clear on what we're doing moving forward. And that the analogy I always like to paint for especially folks who are new to psychedelics is we are creating a garden here. And that first integration is taking care of the soil and getting the compost and adding earthworms and making sure it's really tilled and ready and fertile to sow our seeds. And that will be the ceremony itself is when we actually put the seed in the ground.
Do you have anybody that, after this clarity call or even after the next call or so, anybody you just say, well, to yourself at least at first, I don't think I can work with this person? Does that happen frequently or ever?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say frequently, but it happens. And I always need to check in with myself because I am running a business after all, and it's money, but integrity over money. And whether I think either I'm not qualified enough or I'm not the best person. Again, I have a network of facilitators that I'm in close communication with. So there may be someone who is more focused on alcoholism or sexual traumas that I'm like, I don't think I'm the one to handle this. I think you'd be in better hands there. So that happens. Yeah, it happens for sure. And I think it's ultimately uh, the best case for both of us.
Yeah, I mean, this is something you're going to be pretty intimately involved with somebody with, and you want to make sure you're the right person for them, and they're the right person for you. Like for example, if I take on a coaching client, you better believe I want to make sure that we click and we connect. And it's the same thing. If I feel like no matter how much money somebody wants to pay me, if I don't feel that we're right for each other, the money doesn't mean anything. I want to make sure so it's very similar situation with you then.
Absolutely. And yeah, incredibly important to have that just that free exchange of thoughts, right? When you're not connected with someone, at least in my experience, it's hard for me to show up fully. I'm not really present, and I've just had those conversations where I pull back and I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to work with that person. And it's no offense to them. But yeah, it absolutely happens because again, it's such a you know, folks need to feel safe, and I need to feel safe in this work as well. So it's something that definitely needs to be established at the forefront.
Totally. Sometimes when I was a practicing dentist, I let that go too long, and sometimes in the morning I'd see somebody's name on the schedule, and if I saw a particular person's name, I would start to get like feel nauseous, and I'm thinking like why did I ever allow that person to even become a patient in the practice? That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to feel nauseous when I see somebody's name on the schedule. So we all, no matter what we're doing, we have to feel really comfortable and really connected to the person we're working with. So sounds good, Jake. And so and then the next step would be what?
So then we hop into the ceremony, right? Sowing that seed and hopefully something beautiful blooms. And that could look any number of ways. I've had clients that are all over the country that fly me out because they want to do the ceremony at their house where they feel very calm and connected and safe. Some folks need an escape from that, right? Some folks need to step out of their reality and decide to come out here to Salt Lake. So a lot of those folks will get a hotel for about 2, 3 nights, kind of check in and acclimate. And then depending whether they want to do it at an Airbnb they get or do it at my place, I have the ceremonial space in my house that I'm always happy to offer.
Do you have a
And the
preference?
ceremony,
Do you
what's
prefer
that?
do you prefer one over the other?
I I'm always happy to meet people where they're at. I used to love travel. I like home. I got a nice home. I love it. I don't like to leave as much as I used to. Um, so yeah, I think I like to do it here. But happy to meet people.
Especially if they want to fly you to like Maui or something like that.
I'm waiting for that. I went up to Alaska last year, I've never been to Alaska. I was so excited, but it was Fairbanks in January, and it was not quite the Alaskan trip of my dreams. I don't think I saw the sun.
Wow. Wow. But that's incredible. Somebody flew you to Alaska. I don't think you drove. They flew you to Alaska. And well that's good for you though. That's beautiful. Even though it was Fairbanks in January, still I'd say I'm gonna say very, very cool. Very cool. Okay, so you're in the setting wherever it might be, whether it's their home, their Airbnb, your studio or your place, then what?
So there's a couple requisites that I always make sure with every ceremony. I usually start them a little later in the morning. 10 a.m. is the time I like because I need to get myself in check and I need to go for a run and meditate and do all my things and not feel rushed. And then most importantly, clean the space. Um, Sage and Palo Santo and do all that. And set up a comfy little daybed with an altar space where again I have my specifics for an altar, but ultimately the altar is their space. So I encourage them to bring an offering of some sort to place upon the altar. So sometimes it's like a wedding ring or a family photo. It could really be anything, but something personal of meaning just to place upon as an offering. Um, and then they, again, usually show up around 10 a.m. I'm a big tea drinker, so I offer them a glass of tea and we kind of tune into each other's frequencies. We don't hop right into it, talk about, what we've been talking about on a deeper level, what's been coming up this morning, all that. And then we'll partake in the ceremony itself and they'll speak their intentions aloud and um, ingest the medicine, and then they'll lay down and wait for it to kick in. Usually, 45 minutes to an hour, and then it goes all types of ways.
Now, who picks the dosage? Do you recommend a dosage? Do they say something like, well, I think I only want to do 2.5 grams? How does it actually work? Do you suggest something? How does that work?
Great question. I recommend a range, but ultimately it is their decision. Just as it is their medicine, right? And again, I don't provide any medicine. That's how I'm able to do so legally and pay taxes on this is a harm reduction service. Folks source their own medicine in any number of ways. And then, yeah, based on what they're looking for in clients in the past, I say it may make sense, anywhere between 3 to 5 grams of mushrooms, and then they decide on what feels right.
Okay, so I guess I'm guessing they probably have an idea coming into it. They're probably not making that decision that morning, but I guess they probably think that, okay, when I come to see Jake, I'm gonna bring 4 grams, and that's what I'm gonna do. Like I'm guessing.
They usually bring a little more, because a booster is a fantastic option for folks, especially folks who are new and a little trepidatious at the beginning. Let's always start with less because you can't, if
So,
you've done too much, you can't back up from that, but you could always add on.
so
So I pretty much always recommend or suggest the option of a booster.
so tell me about that. Would it be typical then to say, well, somebody that's a little bit anxious about this, would it be typical to say, well, let's start off with 2.5 grams, but you have another 2 grams in front of you. So after, I don't know, I'm just making this up. After an hour and a half, if you feel you want it stronger, you'll take another 2 grams. Is that something that's normal or typical that you do?
Absolutely. Very typical. I'd probably bump that time up to 45 minutes to an hour check-in. But you're right on with, yeah, with how the booster tends to work. And it's fascinating how often folks they know exactly what they need when the time comes. And they know if they want the booster. More often than not, they don't. They say, I'm fine right here. I'm enjoying it, but I don't need any more.
So just a little off topic, but not really off topic for just for a second. If somebody's watching this or listening to this and they're they want a journey at home on their own and they're not really that experienced, would you recommend saying, okay, well, at first take a little bit of a smaller dose, and then after 45 minutes to an hour, if you want more, you could take more. Is that pretty good practice, do you think?
Great practice. I would go a step back even further and say, first, establish a relationship with the medicine and let's try a microdose. Have a Saturday on your calendar when you don't have any work. Again, establish a relationship with the medicine and the medicine with you and see how you feel. Do you feel super wavy with 100 milligrams? Then you're probably pretty sensitive and let's down your dosage. But yeah, I would never just jump straight into medicine. I always recommend microdosing for folks first time because it gives you kind of a general range of your sensitivity to the medicine.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. And when somebody comes to see you and they bring their own medicine, do you normally ask them about the strain? Because typically, obviously, if they've got golden teachers, if you do 4 grams of that, that's going to be one thing. But if they've got like albino penis envy and do 4 grams of that, it's going to be, it could be, I don't know, close to double or 1.5 times. So do you talk about strain with them as well, or do you just kind of trust them to bring the medicine, whatever they want, and that's fine?
Absolutely. Strain is must know knowledge. The ideal situation, if folks are open to it, is there are testing kits online which test the potency of your medicine, and they're like $20. And it's good knowledge to have coming into a ceremony.
Excellent. Excellent. So, okay. So we're at the point where they've ingested the medicine. You're with them. 45 minutes to an hour has gone by. Then what?
Well, again, then any number of things could happen. And that is, yeah, when me as a facilitator is really fully tuned in to this person. And I've had instances where folks are eye shade on, music going for 4 hours, and they're just laying there. And I could tell something's happening, but it's not, yeah, my curiosity is not going to get the best of me. I'm going to let them have their experience. I'm always sitting there with my notepad, watching, keeping an eye, making sure they're safe, and logging. Um, Usually it's not 4 hours of straight silence. They'll sit up and say what could be some pretty profound things. I've also had folks who talk for 4 to 5 hours straight, and it becomes a talk therapy session. And I'm jotting everything down, and they're connecting dots. Some folks are just verbal processors. Some folks are very somatic, and I have a yoga mat laid out, and they need to stretch and shake and dance. So it's part of what's exciting about this job is no 2 days are the same.
And what happens if somebody feels like they start to feel super uncomfortable, or I'm sure you can tell, and I don't like to use the word bad trip because, there's supposedly there's no such thing as a truly bad trip. There's always a lesson in everything. But what happens when they take a turn for something that maybe becomes very uncomfortable for them? What do you do?
Yeah, great question, and something that comes up fairly often, as you would expect, right? And you're right on with it's not a bad trip. It's a challenging trip. There's lessons that need to be learned there. Um, so my client will have that information in their head from the preparation, right? I'll prep them for what happens if things get uncomfortable. Why are they uncomfortable? What to search for while we're in this uncomfortable state. You think there's a monster behind that closet? Cool. Let's go open up that door and see what's really there. It's probably not a monster. It's probably a lesson you need to learn. So again, folks are prepped and primed for that. When it comes to when it's too much and they need to regulate, again, in preparation, we talk about how to do so. So part of my preparation protocol is having folks work on their own form of breath work, just a calming breath, as well as meditation. And then another thing I have them do is go sit under a tree. Just sit under a tree once, and the purpose being to create space and find what that stillness looks like. And the reason we do all of those things, again, is to create space to feel what you're feeling. So that if things do go pretty acute in the ceremony itself, cool. You've been doing that breath, that square breathing for 2 weeks now. Let's go ahead and do it together. Let's sit and face each other and do it together. I have a few other different practices. Um, I implore kind of a breaking case of emergency, depending on the severity of someone's anxiety around it. But it's pretty often that folks, I mean, I would say 100%, they always end up coming back down and just focusing on their breath and recentering.
But what do you do if they don't? If you feel like there's more going on, and you feel like they need something more than just breath work or something like that. Do you have anything in your toolbox to get them to talk them down or get them down from something that seems like it might be more extreme?
Yeah, the when you reach that level, it's most common that it's looping. And this is typical of people who take too much, right? When they're like, I want to have a crazy experience. I'm going to take 7 grams against my recommendation. And they get in this state of looping that they can't get out. They get this one intrusive thought. They say, I'm stuck here. I'm going to be stuck like this forever. So at that point, we need to again refocus them and focus on their breath, but they need to talk to someone. They need assurance that it's going to be okay. And that's a moment when it's really good to have a facilitator and someone to guide them through that. Because in that instance, they do need some time to pass. Um, but again, I think that's happened with 4 or 5 clients. They always end up coming back down. Sometimes it's a matter of hours, but they always end up coming back.
And just to put things in perspective, 4 or 5 clients out of how many that you've
Over
done?
100.
Wow. Okay. So tiny percentage.
Yeah.
Are people, are your clients when they ingest 4 to 5 grams of psilocybin or psilocybin mushrooms, I should say, are they, would you say they're functional? Can they have like a totally normal conversation and, pretend everything's okay? Or give me a breakdown of how many can do that or how many can't do that at all, roughly.
Such a wide variance. I've had folks have 5, 6 grams, be in perfect conversation. You wouldn't know. They would tell you that stuff's going on for sure, but naked eye, hard to tell. And then I've had folks with 2 grams of mushrooms having transcendental experiences. So there really is no rhyme or reason. It's part of the magic of this medicine. Um, there are variables in terms of potency of mushroom and what you eat that you could kind of control, but ultimately, everyone's experience is so varied.
So let's say this journey is taking place and I'm just again making this up, but 4 3 4 hours into it, they're still with you. How do you determine like how to end this? When does it end? What do you do at the end? And how do you determine when that ending actually is?
I determine nothing. This is fully on the client. I don't want anyone to feel rushed ever. So I block out like through the evening. And I've had some folks, stay at my house for 8, 9 hours, and that's completely fine. Um, Oftentimes folks they'll know. You'll see the arc and you'll see them start to come down. And every time they say, I think I'm starting to come down. We usually go for a walk in the backyard and they just start to reconnect. And then they'll reach a point where they're pretty depleted and they're like, I'm ready to go back to the hotel and just like take a bath and hang. And, I always say be gentle with yourself in the night. Try to journal, is a big tip that evening. Even if it's voice recording, if you don't feel like writing, try to get down your experience as best you can because it's going to start to fade, right? It's like a dream. So you want to be able to plot down as much as you can. But yeah, they're the ones to call the shots for the entire day. I am That's why I am careful not to call myself a guide, but rather a facilitator because I'm not guiding the experience. I'm here to hold the container. But they're the ones guiding their own day.
And when they're ready to leave, when they leave, I mean, do they drive back to their hotel in a rental car, or do you say, hey, you need to furnish transportation? I don't, no matter what, I don't want you driving after this journey. How does that work?
Great question. Absolutely not driving themselves. Yeah, they're Ubering. If they're here local in Salt Lake and have a friend to pick them up, that's fine. But yeah, they're not driving for the remainder of the day.
What else is there? Anything we kind of took this from the very beginning, from your initial call with them, and then through the journey to the time they think that they're fine and it's over. Then what happens after that? I'm assuming, I'm just guessing. I know you, and I know you care so much about your people. So I'm guessing it's not the last time you're going to talk to them.
Absolutely not. And integration is as important as prep and the ceremony itself, right? And going back to that analogy where the ceremony, cool, we have this beautiful rose, but if we don't take care of this rose, it's going to wilt and die. So we need to prune it, we need to water it, we need to give it sunlight. That's integration. And that's usually 4 or 5 days after. We need to let the dust settle a little bit. So there'll be an afterglow phase for those 2 or 3 days after. You get about 2 weeks of neuroplasticity, which is fantastic. It's a great time to actually enact these changes. We'll have our first integration call. I'll go over my notes with them. We'll talk about the ceremony. We'll find some shared points of some big profound moments they have and take some lessons away from there. And then the most important part is what's the plan to enact the changes that they want to see. And the remainder of the integration calls are following up with that plan that we derive it from the first.
And how does future dosing of the medicine come into play? Like, do you say, well, I'm going to recommend that you microdose, or do you recommend that, maybe after several months they're going to take another journey? Or how do you determine that? And what do you usually recommend?
Again, it's not my choice, not even my place to recommend. I would say I'm really hands off. There to answer any questions. And if folks say, I want to do another journey tomorrow, which they never do, they need time, obviously. But next week, say, I will step in and say, okay, my suggestion is give it at least 6 to 8 weeks. Let this one really settle. Let's get this intention plan to use. Um, Microdosing is pretty common after that folks want to, so I'll give them a plan for microdosing. But yeah, it's fully in their hands, depending or deciding what they want to do and how they want to proceed. I do get repeat clients, folks that want to go deeper, and those are fantastic for them because the first journey jitters are out of the way and they kind of go deeper. And they really do build upon themselves. We become more comfortable with each other. So that's fantastic, but I don't do no follow up they're not on my mailing list after.
Is there anything we missed or anything that you want to add that I just didn't get to ask you about about the, journey from start to finish?
I think we covered it. I think, yeah, you got a pretty good idea of, if you could call it, the typical journey. That's typically the framework we work within, of course. But everyone's experience is vastly different.
Very interesting. I thank you so much for your time. Look, I'll tell you something. I think I might come by and do it with you. I mean, it's really interesting, and I would trust you 100%.
Thanks, Dave. It would be my honor. I would love to sit with you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that offline. Jake, if anybody is really interested, they like this information and they're curious, how would they get in touch with you?
Thanks for asking. The best way is go to my website. It's SOL passage.com. And it's got all my information there and pricing sheets and everything you would need to get started. And you just reach out and then we schedule that clarity call.
Incredible. Thank you so much for your time. Would you come back another time soon? I mean, I always love talking to you, and I think there's so many more things, so many more topics that you and I can discuss. I think people would really be really interested. Would you come back sometime?
I would love to. I get so much out of this as well. So thanks for having me.
Like I said, I love your energy. And maybe next time we do it, maybe we'll go back to, if it's warmer weather, maybe we'll go back to the tea shop. We'll see. But that was a cool tea shop anyway that you turned me on to in Sugar House there in Salt Lake.
Shout out to Teas Auntie always. We love them.
Give them a shout out. They deserve it because they're so nice and their tea is just wonderful. Jake, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking your time this morning. And can't wait to talk to you again. I really appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, Dr. Dave.
And remember, we have a brand new podcast episode that comes out every single Wednesday and Friday. It's Microdose U here. If you like this information, make sure you share, subscribe, like, all of the above, because it helps the channel quite a bit, and you won't miss any episodes. And as I say at the end of every episode, I love you, and I will see you on the next episode.